Hello guys, and welcome back to the Gold Club World Championship. It's Dreadnought and Dunk Train once again, where we're going to be bringing you the third set of today that we have, that's between eStar and Dignitas.
And what a set that will be. We have not had the opportunity to see these two fight very much, and now eStar on home turf against Dignitas. The only European representative here.
Yes.
They had a rough match against MVP Black. No questions about that. So they have to recover and get something going in this tournament, in this match.
Yeah, and we just saw eStar coming off of a 1-1 trade that they ended up getting over SPT, which, I mean, SPT is a higher seeded team, just in the sense that because they had the performance, and eStar's had these struggles when it comes to the visas to be able to go to certain tournaments, so it's kind of strange. But in theory, SPT was going to be the higher seeded team, so the fact that they were able to get that trade, probably going to be a positive mentality coming up for them going into this next game. It's
interesting actually that SPT being the higher seeded team, but eStar is the one that we saw in Ballistic's video where they were talking about how much they respect that team.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to see, you know, eStar lower seed, but gets a lot of respect globally, that sort of thing. And I'm actually really looking forward to seeing Dignitas play against them, because they've never really clashed with the full roster type stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a really interesting dynamic that makes Chinese teams so much better playing on home turf.
I think another thing too, when looking at these two teams going against one another, is the drafts that we saw versus Dignitas was essentially, or excuse me, from eStar were kind of the same style. At least the draft seemed a little bit more of the European flavor, so maybe Dignitas has to change their prioritization of heroes going to the next draft. But first, we're going to have to hear from Team Dignitas and their thoughts on the Gold Club World Championship.
And they're here to show you why they are the #1 seed. Please welcome.
现在地图右边红色方的是 Dignitas。
你要记得，他最开始跟那个大魔王打的时候是把他压了3级啊。杀牛，一个屏障卡住，牛一个水晶。
你到后期的话没有办法和 Dignitas 这边比 C 位的伤害的呀。
Team Dignitas is a team with a lot of raw talent, and they are a well-established team that has done really well in the European scene, winning most of the European tournaments in 2016.
I'm Bakery, and I'm the support and team captain for Team Dignitas. I think our synergy and our teamwork is one of the big strengths of our team.
I think we still have the ability to get stronger than we are right now, but I think currently we're still a very good team. I think our training conditions are mostly good. We're all very focused on improving as much as we can. I think we're a stronger team than many of the other teams here, and I think we'll have a good placing as a result.
It would be amazing to win, but that's definitely not our target for this tournament.
I think the rest of the tournament better watch out, because we're here to prove that Europe is by far one of the strongest regions.
I think they can do really well. Furthermore, there's some really strong opposition here, so I think it's important not to get intimidated. Team Dignitas, they have what it takes to beat the world's best teams, and if they can do so a few times, they could just see themselves to a really good placement.
By far one of the strongest regions here, in the words of Snitch, and I guess we're going to have to see here, as Dignitas is going to be going up against China for the first time in this tournament. Struggled against MVP Black, as you brought up a bit earlier, but again, it's MVP Black. I think that might be a bit expected. Granted, MVP Black looks weaker probably than they ever have, or at least they're going to try and change everybody's mind in that sentiment at this tournament.
Definitely, and Dignitas here, you know they want this. They want to prove they're still the strongest in Europe. After Fnatic had the amazing showing at BlizzCon, and Dignitas had a little bit of a rougher time, you know they have to be hungry to prove they deserve to be the #1 seed from Europe. They deserve to be here in this slot. And that will hopefully drive them to do well here. Even if they lost MVP Black, there's so much time in this round robin for them to continue improving.
Yeah, and one thing to be noted too from Dig is that they are the only team to represent Europe at every World Championship that's ever existed. So they do have a very impressive track record. But out of the Chinese region, eStar is a team that I think when you think of the region overall, granted maybe a little bit weaker than they have been in the past, or at least currently are trying to show otherwise, eStar is, when I think of China, it is eStar, right? Like when I think of Korea, a lot of the times it's MVP Black, but for this region, it is very much the eStar team. The roster, they've made some adjustments, but post Zhao Ti, it seems like they've been trying to gain traction, and slowly but surely they've managed to do that.
It is, and it's a long road uphill. When you lose someone who's a huge pillar of your team, that can definitely set you back, and we saw that with eStar. So the fact that they've kind of recovered from that and are building back up that synergy, I think it's just indicative of a really strong team, good management, and like just focus overall that we don't see a lot out of our region, NA. So props to eStar. I mean, they have maybe had some downfalls, but got back up.
Yeah.
And that's truly the mark of, a great team.
Exactly. It's just, everybody's going to have those struggles. Everybody's going to lose a map here and there. It's whether or not you come back later into the series. But talking about the maps here, we do have our choices. Dignitas banning out the Sky Temple and eStar getting rid of Garden of Terror. But we do see eStar is willing to take Dignitas here in game number 1 to Warhead Junction. And the Dig, no surprise, their best map is going to be Inferno Shrines, and they'll lock that in for themselves.
Yeah, Warhead Junction, huh? I mean, that is a spicy one. We talk about this a little bit, but Warhead Junction, not very common.
No.
Very unusual.
Granted, it's got a limited amount of time comparatively.
That's true.
But still, when you only have 2 maps to choose, that is a little bit strange.
It is strange, but maybe it's a sign that, they want to do something weird, a little out of the blue.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things when we see those out-of-place maps. It's one of 2 signs usually. It's either we are totally prepared for this situation and we are more than confident that we can take Dig on a map that they probably haven't prepped for nearly as well, or it's kind of like the opposite, to where you feel uncomfortable against your opponent, and so you are banking on that lack of comfort. And maybe sometimes you see a little bit of mixture of both, but either way, this adjustment here for eStar is something that I really hope that they prove that it was well thought out and calculated.
Yeah, it's no good doing mind games if you end up mind gaming yourself as well. That's something you have to learn the line about. Now, eStar is coming to this draft, their second pick, because they chose the map. Dignitas looking for a first ban here. Now, earlier in the day, we've been talking about really map-specific amazing heroes. On Warhead Junction, globals are good, but it's not like Dragonshire level, I would say. I mean, I don't know that there's map-specific heroes that are just insane to let through.
Yeah, I think one thing that we saw already from Dig against MVP Black in their drafts was that they did move into a Task Tracer composition, and that is something that's going to be very successful on this type of map. Open territory, right? Illidan comps thrive here as well. The distance to safety when you get into a rough spot is very, very long, and those small skirmishes, much like you see on towers, because the map objective is going to split the team up, we might see them move into that route, but Malfurion and ETC are going to be the removal so far here. Dignitas is going to have their first pick, and we'll see what they value. Is it going to be that global playstyle or something a little bit more, just Dignitas,
Yeah, will they go for a team fight or globals? Now, Murden is available. We've talked a lot about Murden and ETC being kind of the premier tanks, although in this tournament we've seen a ton of Johanna as well.
Yes.
So that's something to think about. But on this bigger map, maybe not as much emphasis there. Maybe Murden has even more value relative to Johanna because wave clear is not as important here. That could be a consideration. On the other hand, we've seen Vala prioritization. We've seen Brightwing. There we go. We got a global.
We got the global. And on the note of Murden specifically, is Murden has, a majority of the drafts here so far, skimming through them, that Murden has actually made it post the second ban phase on a lot of his picks, even with ETC being this kind of like ban focus, possibly because of his global potential. But overall, Tassadar has had a colossal spike to the front half of drafts, and Murden has somehow made his way to the lower aspect of these drafts, and we'll see if this trend continues here. But they do take out the Tassadar, which means now Dig is not going to be able to move into that Task Tracer route that we expected from them.
Do you think that was a specific scouted, we need to not let them have Task Tracer, so we're going to early pick Tassadar? Or do you think eStar just has a general strategy or thinks Tassadar is generally that strong?
I don't know. I think that they were understanding that Dig might be able to do that again because they've shown that into their drafts. Granted, picking it this early, Dignitas did pick a early Tassadar and then picked up the Tracer very late into the draft, so they had the opportunity to ban it out unless they were going to force that pick right there. So either way, I think eStar, I would say that they probably had the idea that they were not willing to give that up to their opponents here. And Dignitas end up responding with the man who has really come out of every shrub possible here and spiked so heavily when it comes to prioritization is Dahaka.
So pretty much every global.
I mean, that's how it's been almost across the board.
Yeah.
It's been global on global on global. The amount of prioritization is just ridiculous that we see from these teams. And then Tychus is going to be picked up for Dig.
It's amazing watching over time in Heroes the pendulum swing back and forth about globals. They'll get really hyped for a while and be in every game and then kind of fade away, and then people will rediscover them. And it's just really interesting to watch. So we're definitely seeing like peak global usage right now, where pretty much every draft people are putting so much emphasis on those. Now Murden will be banned out by eStar. I think that's an excellent choice if they're not planning to take it. But that means they're kind of locking themselves out of tanks here too. There's not very many available.
I think that means that they're comfortable onto the Johanna. That is something that they want to be moving into. Chen is still an option. Again, he doesn't usually get to be played in that solo warrior position here. But yeah, I think with ETC Murden out, if the Johanna is selected here for eStar, they have put a pretty heavy control onto Dig, even though they do have the Dahaka. Again, you don't usually want that as the solo warrior. Tyrael as a removal too. He's been almost 100% involvement so far into this tournament from every draft. It may not be exactly 100%, I haven't been able to double check that, but it is much higher than we saw in past tournaments.
Absolutely, and that's what's going to happen, right? When you have 3 Korean teams and 3 Chinese teams in the same tournament. Both of those regions are known for having strong Tyrael players and running a lot of Tyrael, so it's no surprise that in this event, where there's so many more of those regions' teams, that Tyrael gets very high pick rate. Now, Rhaegar to back him up, that's, you know, just the mega safe standard healer, not going for anything weird there.
But it does prep for a very strong melee assassin composition, right? I mean, one that comes to mind kind of is going to be like a Greymane, for instance. Anywhere where you have the Tyrael, you have Tassadar, and then you have a burst healer, it's just very much priming that hyper carry. Illidan is an option too. He's going to be banned out by Dig, so I take that back. Sonya, I don't think is going to be the go-to. Do you have any in mind that you really would like to see eStar move into? I can't.
It's hard to say here, just because I'm concerned about running melee assassins into Dahaka. I always feel like that's a little bit risky.
And there are a lot of really good tools on the side of Dig to be able to deal with it, but I also look at Johanna, that the blind is effective, but past that point, her peeling is usually not too great, and I feel like Tassadar and Tyrael usually can kind of make up for that, whereas ETC, you have a lot of parts you need to be fearful of. You also, like, Murden has great peeling for his allies as well. So I actually don't hate the idea of eStar moving into that hyper carry like a Greymane. Granted, Greymane has kind of fallen out a little bit when it comes to the meta to where he was before. I'm trying to think. I feel like I'm missing a hero that I really want to see eStar move into, but I can't think of it off the top of my head here.
The question is, how is Dignitas going to round out their comp? They already have double tank. They need some more damage. They will go with Li Ming. That does leave them pretty fragile, though. We know those solo Brightwing healer compositions sometimes struggle at dealing with burst damage. If someone actually gets isolated, they don't have, you know, those save buttons. So it's going to come down to basically Dahaka and Johanna always making sure they cover all the flanks, making sure that Li Ming and Tychus can damage safely.
Yeah, the anchoring of those has to be absolutely got to be on point. And that we need to see Dignitas with him having that double global composition. They really do need to be able to make sure they capitalize on that, right? Like, we do see some teams see that heavy prioritization, but then fail to gain anything out of it. And it's going to be the Zeratul, one that for some reason slipped my mind, but one of his probably second best map, I would say. Behind, I think Sky Temple is one where you can predict the rotations a bit better. But at the same time, is that the true hyper carry? He is something that everybody has been a bit more fearful of, right, since his rework and the adjustments that we've seen onto his talent tiers. But do you feel like that was the hyper carry? That was the melee assassin you wanted to see eStar go with?
He's not a hyper carry in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
He just doesn't bring that damage like you were talking about the Greymane style role. But it's possible I could see it being enough. Now, for me personally, I have to say I don't really like the Zeratul pick, because when I think of Zeratul, the one hero I don't want to play him into is probably Brightwing.
Yep.
Like, that is something that scares me. So for eStar to pick that there is, I don't want to say brave, but they have to understand they're picking into Brightwing, and they must have a reason for it. So maybe they just think Rhaegar Tyrael is enough to where it doesn't matter, but that's what concerns me. When I look at that draft, it feels a little bit damage light.
Yeah, I was going to say...
A little bit damage light.
Yeah, I was going to make the comment of that. Yes, we do see we have Void Prison is an option for them, and they also have Sanctification, which I always reference as the most powerful heroics in the game, but I'll touch up on this a bit later as we do actually have the start here of game number 1 between Dignitas and eStar. And here we are. Game number 1 on the left side is going to be Team Dignitas. Athero is going to be playing Dahaka Bakery onto the Bright Wing. Mene is going to be on Li Ming. JPL will be playing the Johanna, and Snitch is going to be playing Tychus.
And on the red side of this Warhead Junction map, we have Savage playing Zeratul, Tao playing Rhaegar, Xingchen playing Falstad, Toomey playing Tassadar, and rounding it out with Tiger playing the Tyrael.
Tiger the tank actually onto the tank, but what I was referencing with the 2 heroics is essentially they have so much utility in their composition, right? Like with the Sanctification and Void, and they're so powerful, but if you don't have the damage to really back it up, I feel like they've put a lot of pressure onto the Falstad. His performance, even Gus being one of those higher utility heroics here. So Dignitas does have to be mindful of those because, again, the strength that they do provide to a team fight, but I do feel like eStar has put so much pressure onto Falstad. He's also moved into Gathering Storm, so he needs to be very efficient with his stacking here into this game, while as Mene and JPL do have the opportunity to get that Condemn into a huge orb and possibly a reset here for them. But as we say, that pretty heavy skirmisher here, already level 3 JPL,
nice
excuse me, Athero.
Global, though.
Yeah, comes in with the drag. Bakery's under pressure, though, as the Falstad did get the fly in. And right now, they do go 1 for 1, but Dignitas health bars are significantly lower. Body block here coming out from Tiger.
That is a scrappy level 1. They wanted blood. Both teams very aggressive there. And that is interesting. I mean, the Rhaegar Tassadar Tyrael actually did a lot of work at the beginning of that trade, I have to say. They were doing very good here. And now JPL thought he was safe on Johanna, but just gets shredded. Maybe this composition has enough damage. I guess if you're going to walk into lanes like that.
Yeah, it might have enough damage. That early game skirmishing, though, there are a lot of heroes overall on the side of eStar that just objectively are very powerful even at level 1. I mean, the Zeratul is, especially having the Vorpal Plate opportunity there at level 1 is something to always be looking out for. But we were talking about how I want to see Dignitas actually capitalizing if they have the globals on their side, and they did a pretty good job there. Snitch under pressure, but they did a good job. It was just a proper response on the side of eStar, and see how this works out as the nukes have spawned here for the 2 teams, 1 on top and 1 on bottom.
Yeah, right now it looks pretty stalemated here over those warheads. There's no way that Dignitas just lets this channel finish. They're going to poke in. But because Tychus got chunked so hard, look how much Snitch has to be careful walking here. It wasn't until they saw Zeratul for sure that he could afford to rotate up and get into that Brightwing healing. But even then, he has to wait a long time before he actually gets healed up, and that's one of the downsides of solo healer Brightwing. Yeah,
and Peekaboo has actually already spotted out Savage there on the Zeratul, and that's going to be something he has to consider at all points in time. The fact that Peekaboo can get that free reveal. The 1v1 between Dahaka and Falstad seems to be relatively even more concerned about the experience. So for now, these teams have just put so much focus here on the bottom Warhead. Bakery starting the channel. Rhaegar is not going to be able to interrupt. Tassadar is going to be there for that right now. It's Toomey getting the safe play.
eStar just denied a whole wave of minions on the bottom lane. Snitch could not rotate. He was too scared. If you let that happen one or two more times, that's a huge problem.
Yeah, one thing that some people, maybe some of the viewers might not understand, how valuable minion waves are this early on. It's actually more valuable than a kill.
Yeah.
Granted, it does hurt your channeling potential with the kill and having a member down, but look at the experience only snowballing heavier, and now the positioning on from Tyrael and Zeratul is actually just the block from that mini wave. So 2 waves now is going to be denied here against Dignitas. Top lane is still pretty much dead even. And it's all about the experience game. And in the long run, eStar here is gaining the upper hand.
They are, and that is just honestly really beautiful rotation control from eStar to make sure Dignitas cannot get that warhead while also denying the experience.
Ethereal ends up burning the global down, giving Falset a free channel. Bakery was under pressure. He's now going to be able to get the channel. Tyrael will be able to deny that with his Druid's might. So right now, eStar has full control, denying 2 waves, getting the nuke on the upper half of the map for Falset. He will be able to channel that for free. Keep in mind, he still has his flight to move downward. Bakery starting the channel. Again, the deny. It's level 4 here, coming into very high value here on the side of eStar. And he doesn't get the interrupt there, actually. Bakery confirms that channel, a little bit too cocky when it comes to the interrupt game that they were playing on the side of eStar, and end up getting a small advantage here, experience deny.
That is not what eStar wanted to happen, though. They were in such an amazing position, utilizing the fact that they were outmanning them in the top lane. They were getting more and more experience ahead, and then just, you know, you try to min-max. You try to make Bakery channel as long as possible on that Warhead before getting it, but it's not worth risking actually giving it up. Yeah, just a little bit earlier to play the safe game there, because I don't believe I saw it at any point used beforehand. I'm pretty sure he was very much waiting and only using it for that interrupt at that point in time. So either way, though, eStar did, I mean, honestly impressed me with the decision-making they had during that entire phase, minus a small misplay for them. And right now, it shows when it comes to the experience. They have done a lot to dictate the pace of this game, backing out, painting the map their color. So for right now, just complete control. And Dig, I feel like they have the stronger comp. I believe, at least in the early half of the game, I feel like I liked some of the early skirmishing. Granted, post-10, it's just because those heroics on the side of eStar are so strong. But we'll see if they're going to be able to outscale them, because Tyke is only, I mean, he's an absolute monster, right? Li Ming, it takes 1 combo and it's going to be enough. But for now, the team's just going to be channeling, backing out. The heroics for eStar are extremely good, but I would like to point out, we've seen teams struggle with the high coordination requirement to run things like Void Prison and Gust and Sanct all on the same team. So I am concerned, and I'm going to be watching out for whether they have the synergy required to actually utilize this composition. I would say eStar has a very high burden on their execution. They need to use all of their heroics in a coordinated fashion to teamfight effectively, whereas Dignitas has a lot of things that are basically powerful independently. So they don't need to worry about that. Yeah, and I mean, some of them, when you look at the heroics on the side of Dig, are pretty much not even a long cooldown, right? If you use the Void or Sanctification, the duration and cooldowns are going to be really long. Actually, this is going to be scouted out here. Tiger not going to be able to move in, but like, I mean, Li Ming, hers are going to be very quick and even getting the reset. Brightwing is going to be another example there. So overall, or Brightwing's heroic, excuse me, is another one with a blink heal opportunity. I don't think we're going to see the Emerald win quite yet. And when the heroics here, eStar getting 10 is pretty standard across the board. Nothing too surprising. Not going to be able to catch anybody off guard. I do like the way Savage has kind of been playing this lane. He's mostly been 1v1 with Snitch and has really controlled vision of the middle area of the map, so the rotation between bot and mid, and I think that's helped a lot. And you see he even got a free mercenary camp, though. He was able to pull his allies down to the bottom lane, utilize that 10 advantage for just a few seconds to get a free camp, and that's just really nice right before the warhead spawn. Yeah, and another thing to know is the heroics for eStar also are very good at zoning a lot of the times and just capturing the map objective, right? So if things get in a tough, like, blow-for-blow situation, they can still just use their heroics just to make sure they get the warheads and then walk away. But we'll see how that plays out. The warhead spawning all over the map, capturing everywhere. The juke onto the Blessed Shield and the combo there from Tiger, very well done here as the warhead fight happens on the upper half of the map. Zeratul is making the rotation. Sanctification's up, but look at the mana. It's very low for Tyrael. He has to be very efficient here in his next couple of moves as everybody is now collapsing onto Team Dignitas. Yeah, and I'm not sure that eStar wants to take this fight in such a split manner, but look at that damage on Bakery. Absolutely obliterated by the Zeratul. That is huge damage. Meanwhile, Falset getting traded on, but the Ancestral lands excellently done there, and now Snitch finds himself with no hope, and he will go down as well. That is a 2-for-0 in favor of eStar. Yeah, but the most important thing we have to consider here is who had the warheads in this situation. Both of them were left onto the table. eStar is able to pick them up, and it looks like Savage is not done with Mane. He does get the Calamity, or excuse me, the damage out there with the Calamity. Mane is a static charge on top of him. He does get the blink out, but Brightwing with the teleport is going to be enough to be able to peel off him. I thought he was going to lose his life there, but not the case. Dignitas backs out, but they lose their warheads, and that is something you don't want to see when your opponent already has a level advantage, structural advantage across the board. eStar is really doing a great job. They are proving the value of their thought process into going Warhead Junction against Team Dignitas. They are. They're actually playing this very nicely. And the focus fire onto Brightwing right before she gets ice blocked. You know, she doesn't have level 13 yet, so she can't save herself. difficult with that, and the positioning was not right. One of the things about Brightwing as a solo healer, when your team is deathballed really close together, you lose some of your escape capacity. So when your team fight is really spread out, then Blink Heal serves as an actual blink mechanism and can save yourself. In that fight, because eStar kind of corralled Dig, I thought it would be bad for eStar because they didn't have room to use their big heroics, but it turned out it let them basically pick off Brightwing in the center of their own team.
Yeah, and one thing also here to note when it comes to the build is that Zeratul actually has not gotten into the wormhole. So that's going to be a mobility tool that he doesn't have available to him since his rework was put onto the 7, opting into the W, which increases the duration of time before the proc there. So we'll see if that works out for them here later into this game. Right now, though, again, eStar, a level and a half lead, still has 1 nuke into their hands. Tiger is trying to get the flank. He doesn't have the holy ground yet, but when he does, suddenly I think their composition only becomes more and more terrifying. That is a heroic use just for that nuke.
I mean, he was trying to stop the nuke, but it went off anyway. That's unlucky.
That's the. I mean, I guess that's the trade you get when Tassadar fails to stop the warhead before. Then you know you get Dignitas has to make that as well. But either way, is it worth that cooldown? I guess that's what I'm trying to understand. Like, even if he did stop it, do I look at that and go like, yeah, that was worth?
It's hard to say. I mean, it's obviously not worth if something happens in the next minute while it's down, but realistically, I feel like a lot of the times Dahaka's isolation is kind of an afterthought.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it as well.
Yeah, so it's not the worst thing, but it is awkward. So now Thero does have to back. He should be able to global back up here if the opportunity arises, but...
Savage scouted out the radar there coming out from Mene on the Li Ming. But they're going to be able to pick up the first fort of the game. Bottom fort has already lost a lot of his health as well, so eventually going to be going down here on eStar. That is a almost 2-level advantage here over their opponents. This is Dignitas's like almost last moment in this game to really have an even footing fight.
This is getting scary.
Yeah, it's getting very out of control very quickly here for Dig, and they need to figure it out. But Thero's in a rough spot in the upper half. I don't think he has any chance of getting out of here. Furrow is not going to matter. Just buying him a little bit of time. And the only positive here is it drew so many resources from eStar that Dig did get a warhead, and they're going to be starting the boss on the opposite side of the map. Tassadar has Oracle. He might be able to scout this out.
Even if he scouts it out, I'm not sure that Dig can do it anyway, because eStar can put a lot of pressure on top lane. Like, you might not think about this, but Rhaegar is actually really good at split pushing. Like, he does a lot of damage to minion waves. He puts damage on, especially for a healer. So they can't afford to spend too much time out on the map, and getting gusted away and not confirming that kill, that just wastes even more of their time. That entire keep wall is down, and now 13 to 16 gap. eStar has the talent tier advantage, and they can basically run the flow of the game however they want.
Yeah, they absolutely. They have complete control over this game, and you can't talk about that kill for Dignitas would have been such a much-needed like breath of fresh air. The experience game, because they are so far behind them, the kill might have been enough to be able to try and stop this momentum that eStar has managed to build here already 12 minutes into the game. All of their forts, or excuse me, the top four and the bottom four are dead on the side of Team Dignitas, which makes them more vulnerable into either one of those lanes. Gust, because those are such long lanes that Gust is such an easy flight. Like, the chase potential is just ridiculous. Smite the momentum. The force wall, though, coming out onto JPL. Sanctification used optimistically early. Holy Ground go gets the split here. JPL ends up going down, and right now, Zero Panda, there goes the Void. This is not going to be pretty, Dunk.
Yeah, eStar is in complete control here, but it looks like Dig has actually kind of disengaged pretty successfully here. That's not really what eStar was looking for. Maybe that Void was just a little too aggressive. They couldn't. It seemed like they couldn't get the flyover gust in time.
I think it was. I think it definitely was aggressive, but everybody on eStar gave up on positioning very quickly. So I guess I feel like they definitely could have capitalized, but you could tell their communication was we aren't even going to risk this. And again, it's because those kills are going to be so valuable on the side of Dignitas if they do get them this far behind. But now Dignitas is closing in on that 16. That will be another moment where they might have the opportunity to be able to come back before it hits the 20 spike, and it will come around that warhead spawn time. But both teams have at least one warhead for the time being.
Yeah, but when these warheads spawn, look at how much more map control eStar is going to have. They have much better access to healing wells and just general vision in all of the neutral warhead territory on the top and bottom of the map because of those forts being destroyed and no well in the center. So Dignitas really needs to make something happen with the globals in order for this to be effective. This is Interesting boss by eStar.
I mean, with the positioning of Dig, it's going to be free. Even if they scout this out, it's not going to matter when it comes to control. And on the note of control, one thing that I don't think we really brought up when it comes to eStar's composition that they are legitimately have 3 of the best heroes at is boss control. They cannot lose a boss in most situations to Team Dignitas unless they make a colossal mistake. With Void, Sanctification, Holy Ground, and Mighty Gust, they're just ridiculous tools. And a lot of times that is the win condition on this map. When it has multiple warheads and then you get one of the bosses pressuring into that lane, they could make something happen. And another warhead's going to be dropped here already from Bakery on that pick on the upper half.
That is devastating. I mean, 4 warheads just spawned, 2 in the bot lane. But Dignitas is picking those up. They need to find a way to connect those, though. eStar is basically saying, we gave up getting those bottom warheads. Instead, we wanted to push top key. If they don't secure this keep, that is a huge problem. But luckily for them, the boss will secure that. And Tiger is already working on this other boss. Dignitas shouldn't be able to rotate in time.
Zisha did use his flight, and he is relatively low on mana. Granted, he does have a well to possibly tap down below. Dignitas has completely sniffed this out. They know that they are on to the boss, and eStar appropriately responding, seeing that rotation. They are going to be backing out right away. They realize they have the 20 spike. There's no reason to be risking anything of the like, but with 2 warheads here at 15 minutes, we're almost at our power spike when it comes to the warheads, and that is when that boss could be lethal here. eStar, very controlled, 7-1 when it comes to the kills done.
Very one-sided kill count here, and the story of the rest of the game has not been much different. I mean, it felt like eStar has pretty much been in control ever since that one very well-played first warhead phase. Now, Dignitas, you could tell they were kind of looking to force something there. They really need to make something happen. They only have a brief time window before eStar hits level 20, and they know this. So Dignitas, this is the Hail Mary boss.
Yeah, and they go in to get the drag there onto the Rhaegar, and everybody's now making the rotation down. Tassadar and Falstad and Zeratul will all be able to make it in time, and we talked about the boss control. This is such a rough position here. They're moving away from the boss. They realize they can't capture it. They need to get the kills, and they manage to not be able to get it there quite yet. Snitch ends up going down here. Athero is diving the back line here, but it doesn't look like he's going to be able to confirm anything. Dignitas with a very desperate play, and right now it is not looking pretty for them. That is 3 people dead. It's going to be a 4th and a 5th here. Bakery barely survives. The boss is going to be going down right now. eStar is just picking apart Dig in every way, shape, and form. They seem to have complete control. I can't help but appreciate, though, Dignitas's desperate play. It was a very well calculated one. One I think they had to have to be able to come back into this game. But now with the 3 nukes available, I think that the boss should be able to move in time for only one person, Bakery, to be still dead.
It costs them a lot that Bakery died so much later than the rest of the team, honestly. I mean, level 20 to 17, should be 18 soon, but still, that's a big gap. That talent is enormous. But between the boss and 3 warheads, eStar should be able to look for the core here. Yeah, it should be something that they can abuse. Bakery, only 10 seconds till he is still alive. But keep in mind, we have 20 advantage, 2nd strongest power spike in the entire game, mixed with the fact that we have a 3-level lead here over Dignitas. 1 warhead is used onto the keep. Johanna going in, trying to get the damage out there. The boss still at the 90% mark. Tiger goes in as well. JPL's in a very risky position. Ironskin is down. Bakery is not there quite yet. Sanctification is going to be used. He ends up getting picked off, and this is 1 more kill, and it's 100% going to be game here at this point. Snitch is going to be the one who falls. eStar, man, completely dismantling Dignitas here on Warhead Junction. Very calculated play. I was critical of the Warhead Junction. I felt like it seemed a bit panicked. But obviously, I was very wrong here as they understood exactly what they wanted. They're building globals mixed with boss control, and Dig didn't really seem to have the response. Something I also didn't really consider was there were quite a few people, it felt like, on Dignitas' side that got bodied by the fact that eStar had 2 ways to control terrain. I didn't really anticipate how useful Tassadar Wall plus Holy Ground would be on Warhead Junction. It felt like there were a lot of chokes where that got huge value. Like the Johanna pickoff, she was running back and forth for 15 seconds. It felt like can I get out over here? No. Over here? No. Just blocked off over and over. And that's the kind of thing that it's hard to remember just how impactful something like that can be when you're looking at a draft. Yeah, and I think another thing that
I think, moving into the next game that we're going to see from Dig is the fact that Zeratul made it to the very last pick of that draft, and he seemed very impactful in that game across the board. Even though we talked about you typically don't want to pick it into the Brightwing, even with Pickaboo and the Polymorph, it didn't matter. Savage was an absolute savage on that, like, in the game, and it wasn't even the Voids.
He didn't even get a good Void.
It was not like you were like, oh, that was a game-winning Void. Like, it was constant, just absolute raw harassment over his opponents, and that's without the wormhole mobility that we used to see there with the 13 movement. Like, he just completely destroyed them in a lot of ways, and it just was simple harass and withering away at their health bars.
Yeah, and absolutely masterful lane control. I have to say, like, controlling the Zeratul Tychus matchup was really important for the control of the game during the early phases, and I can't stress that enough. It seems like something small, but, you know, a couple waves of experience here, denying some rotations and visions here, it all adds up, and it can be so oppressive to play against. And to me, getting that MVP on Tassadar, just, you know, so consistent value and some beautiful walls. Yeah, so very well done.
The walls really were impressive. Pairing it, like, as you brought up, with the territory, like, zoning potential that they had with the Holy Ground post 16. And really also, you got to keep in mind the survivability. He allowed Savage to be as aggressive as he possibly could, right? Like, I often put it as you never have, like, a great melee player unless you have the support, like, behind it. You constantly need it. Usually you have the warrior who preps, he gets the follow-up, but the support has to make sure that he doesn't get single target bursted down, and I mean, that can come through Tassadar, it can come through a traditional support, so very well done. Coming out from eStar, and we brought up the hype that the Korean teams have had about eStar, and granted, I think one thing we have to know, BlizzCon, the exact same thing was said, and the eStar roster failed to make it out of the first group stage. So is that still going to be the tale here? So far, I don't think so. Going 1-1 and now getting the first game over Dig. But I guess only time will tell. It's just, it's interesting to see how eStar constantly gets hyped, and then their performance can be so hit or miss.
I think that's kind of been the story of the Chinese teams internationally, though.
Okay.
I mean, on the international stage, it seems like they struggle outside of their home territory, and then you fight them on their home territory, and they seem much stronger. So maybe that's why a lot of the Korean teams respect them so much. They're used to that level of eStar. So if that's the eStar we see here, then they could very easily be a top 4 in this round robin. I mean, they dominated this game, lost no forts, had 14-1 kills. Like, that was not only well executed, it was well thought out and planned from the very beginning, picking Warhead Junction, how you utilize that, controlling space. So all around, that might be the most polished we saw any team look of our game so far today.
I think I would say that. They did seem very calculated in almost every decision. I think the biggest misplay, I would say, from the winning position was the Void, but it wasn't even that bad because they weren't willing to risk anything. It was just essentially they wanted to Void, and you just burnt a major cooldown, but they weren't like, do we go in, do we go out? They were just like, guys, we're just going to back out. And that, even then, is something that measure and control and self-constraint is something you don't typically see from all 5 members, and they seem very uniform here. But we do have to know our second game is going to be Infernal Shrines. And Dignitas, this is their map, in their opinion. Like, statistically, I mean, up until like halfway through BlizzCon at least, they had like a 90-something% win rate on this map. They are very, very good when it comes to Infernal Shrines. And so I feel like map picking is always valuable and something we have to always consider when it comes to wins. So Dignitas here, if they do lose the eStar, I can't help but feel like eStar is a blatantly very strong team already into this tournament.
Absolutely, and here we are getting into the draft, guys, now. eStar versus Dignitas Game 2. eStar will have first ban, first pick on Infernal Shrines. Second time today, Dread. What about that Kerrigan?
I mean, Kerrigan, I am always terrified of her. Granted, we didn't see, I believe it was Ballistics in our first series that we casted, have much success with her as a hero in their games. But a lot of it felt like just like not coordination sticking together with the sanctification composition they had. She just feels almost built for this map in a lot of ways here. But we'll see if Dignitas does have the fear of it, because I mean, they might in their heads be terrified of Zeratul. Granted, it may not be one of his better maps, but the performance we saw of Savage there was nothing to laugh at.
It was not, and ETC as the first ban by eStar, ETC is one of those heroes that very often considered excellent against Kerrigan because his counter engage against her is just so obvious and like instant reaction time. So there's not a lot you could do as Kerrigan initiating on a team with an ETC who has stun available. It really does make it into kind of a waiting game, which can be problematic. Now, Dignitas has the option to look at that Kerrigan ban or will they let it through? I mean, other heroes that are strong on this map, I feel like Ariel is kind of being undervalued as a response to Kerrigan.
Yeah,
currently.
I would agree. I think that is something that we might see adjust as we move through the tournament. Dignitas, when it comes to this map, obviously they do enjoy Kerrigan. Another hero that they do value very highly is Vala. In a lot of situations, the clear that she provides to the Shrine is something that they always will be looking to have on their side whenever possible. But one thing that it hasn't only just been a Shrine's trend is the Tassadar. He has had a very high position here in a lot of the games, and I almost don't hate the idea of Dig just removing Tassadar right here into this draft, but instead they get rid of the Vala, something that they typically like to pick up on their own.
The Vala is definitely one of their personal favorites, so that is quite surprising to me to see them ban it out immediately, leaving the Kerrigan up.
Yeah, I can't help but agree with you on that one, because not only is it such a high value, but it then means that they have to have a pretty drastic and different response than what we typically see from them, which I can't think what it would be at this point.
Is it possible that they expected the Kerrigan first pick and didn't feel comfortable playing Vala into it, maybe?
That could be the case.
And don't like that matchup, so they don't want to leave it for eStar to pick, but I guess either way that's kind of null, given that eStar first picked that Tassadar, just going...
Is this the new era? Has Tass made it back to the top?
Yeah.
For the longest time, Tassadar was considered one of the first pick, first ban, almost level of heroes, and suddenly has hit a pretty tremendous spike so far here at the Gold Club World Championship. Tyrael is picked up for Dignitas very early into this draft. It's insane to see. The fact that we have seen only a couple of heroes changed from BlizzCon to now, and 2 have been implemented. Granted, we are yet to see any of them picked, at least on this stream so far, any of the new heroes. The heroes that have spiked in prioritization are ones that have been untouched. They have completely swapped in prioritization. I'm trying to find the reasoning between some of them. Like the Tassadar, I get a little bit, but the fact that Tyrael has, we talk about how valuable he is, but it's this early into a draft, that is very uncommon.
It's just a conspiracy to pick all things with T's. I think that's what it is.
Okay.
Tassadar, Tyrael, Tychus, it's a conspiracy.
Tyrande next.
Ooh.
Not like this. Everybody knows how much I love that hero, but...
probably not that one.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, I don't hate the Tyrael. I think it's extremely strong, and I think a lot of the Korean and Chinese teams both rely on it.
Yeah,
I agree. To be quite honest. So I think picking it up here, it's early. There's no way eStar can do anything about it, and there's still so much room to build a composition that utilizes it. I feel like it's strong.
Yeah, Dignitas, I feel like they've already, with the first rotation of their draft, has put them in a position to where it's objectively powerful heroes. Don't necessarily thrive when it comes to map, but they're not bad on any map, or there's no situation where you go, that's going to be very easily countered. And I think that is always a positive thing to be able to have. At the same time, Infernal Shrines is one of those maps where if you don't complement the map well enough, having those objectively strong heroes, I think, don't matter so much. And Tassadar, Kerrigan, the synergy together, the Shrine control those two do provide, is something that I think Dignitas might have to be concerned of, not so much in the team fighting phase, but legitimately just in their ability to get those 40 skeletal defenders.
If eStar gets ahead on the Shrine control, all they need is to be like 10 ahead, and then suddenly it becomes impossible for Dignitas to force their way in through the Kerrigan threat, through the Kerrigan healing, and the shields. So I think that's my biggest concern. If they are going to deal with Tassadar Kerrigan, you have to do it by getting onto the Shrine first, or by taking a team fight. But they don't want a team fight until level 10 probably, so the first couple ones especially are going to be scary.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting to see how that plays out in the momentum of Kerrigan. Granted, we did see Ballistics going with that Kerrigan strategy and having a level and a half advantage with 10 spike and still failing to be able to lock down that game. And I do believe that Tyrael was on their team, so never mind, not quite the case here. But Tyrael does provide great counter-engage always to the Kerrigan, as long as he's not going to be the one a part of the combo, or it doesn't manage to get one shot in any way, shape, or form, he will be fine.
eStar is going pretty deep in the tank here for this pick. I really feel like the Tyrael Tychus kind of threw them off, and now they're trying to figure out what else they want. Volstad is an excellent hero on this map. You mentioned earlier that Global's not super impactful here, but still valuable, and I feel like the fact that Volstad can split push and then show up to a Shrine in time really does add quite a bit of value. when you have the kind of characters that can sit on the shrine like Tassadar Kerrigan.
I think that is one thing that a lot of teams underestimate, is that the globals are all fine and dandy, but unless you do have efficient shrine like characters, nothing else matters, right? It's almost like a Sylph factor. Like, Sylph is phenomenal, but if you don't have the heroes that can do it on her own to be able to get the shrine by themselves, she never really gets that synergy of what she is so good at. And the same argument exists for the globals on this map, so I completely agree with you there. But now we are moving into the secondary ban phase. Dig only having the Tyrael Tychus, not having the support option, so maybe that's something that eStar is going to want to look to channel. But also eStar, I was going to say the Johanna ban, just because eStar is yet to be able to pick up their warrior, and that is something that I expected to be looking into focusing.
Does eStar ban out Muradin here, potentially worried about the double warrior? And if they don't, does Dignitas pick it up? I think it's actually an interesting question, because if Dignitas picks up Muradin,
they
I feel
struggle
like
so hard at shrines.
They struggle in shrines, but they have a huge meat wall against eStar, and eStar is stuck with like a Dahaka, Leoric, frontline type stuff. They still need probably another healer, so I feel like it would be really awkward for eStar to not get Muradin in their 4-5 slot.
I think I really agree with you when it comes to like the meat wall, if you will. And again, Kerrigan, her kill potential would die off quite a bit because a lot of the targets are unappealing for her to be able to get onto. Falstad might be able to be a bit more successful, and Tassadar lacking in the damage department means you're banking on the Kerrigan being efficient, so I agree that having that front line could be awesome. But I also am a bit fearful of, if they go into that route again, if they don't manage to be able to get those picks and counter response to Kerrigan getting those shrines and the control really is something that could snowball the game out of control in favor of eStar into this draft. But they end up removing the Malfurion here, one of Bakery's favorite heroes. He seems to have some of the higher prioritization on him and really solid performance usually onto him. Does leave Brightwing available, another global. Something we saw Bakery onto last game, not nearly as impactful as usually his mouth performances though.
I get the feeling that Dignitas probably won't be running solo healer Brightwing. Again, it just felt like it got picked apart pretty easily, and we do see the Rhaegar locked in here.
I really like that over Brightwing too, just because they do struggle in shrines. Lightning Bond Rhaegar onto the Tyrael, suddenly we actually have control over the shrines. You aren't just waiting for Tychus to steal when Tassadar throws out a side storm.
I love Rhaegar Tyrael too, because I feel like Rhaegar is one of the supports that benefits so much from slowing down the fight, and the Sanctification, buying time for you to really decide what you're doing and get your Ancestrals off, can be so valuable. And the Illidan, so this is something we saw on the other stream earlier today, was a Lightning Shield build Rhaegar with an Illidan. Is something that I believe MVP Black actually used on the other stream against Dignitas, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So maybe they're just immediately turning it around and saying, all right, this got used against us, now it's our turn.
It does feel a bit in that manner. Tassadar, Illidan, Tyrael, Falstad, and Rhaegar were the composition for MVP in that game. And we do see a bit of the same heroes having the Rhaegar, and it was in response to a Kerrigan composition. So, I mean, maybe. I do think that the Falstad makes this a bit more difficult to be able to deal with. Not only is he successful into an Illidan, a lot of the times his mage DPS and single target DPS is some of the higher ones, and not so focused on getting his auto attacks out to be able to produce DPS.
Plus
Gust against the Sanctification, which makes that a lot harder.
I mean, the Sanct doesn't make it harder, but I'm worried every time I see an Illidan to Falstad that he metas in, and then suddenly there's a gust, and like the whole team is displaced, they can't follow up, and it's just a disaster. So eStar did pick up the Muradin in their 4th slot, which is what I expected. I think it makes their team composition so much more powerful.
Yeah, and then going with the Brightwing here, very common when paired with the Tassadar and a heavy melee assassin, and the global presence that it provides. But one thing that, talking about the Gust versus Sanctification play out, is one thing you do see typically is Illadins will be in there doing the Illidan dance, trying to provide threat onto the backline, and the Tyrael will then have to move in for the Sanctification to ensure that he doesn't die. But if you just instantly Gust out of that, you're going to isolate the support from that, and that forces a lot of major cooldowns. The Sanctification, and then it usually is going to be a Metamorphosis, but the Illidan's still very low, so if you do it properly and really get to remove the Bakery on that Rhaegar, then it could hurt. But suddenly, the survivability of Illidan got a lot better with that Zarya lock-in.
Absolutely. Zarya, you know, a little bit of that, not the newest hero, but, you know, kind of spicy, newer hero, not as well established as some of the others here. And I really think she does some powerful things here in this composition.
Yeah, but we are going to be getting into game number 2 here on Infernal Shrines between Team Dignitas and eStar. Pretty quick here. Maybe not right now, apparently. Apparently I was wrong. So in a couple of seconds, but either way, I do like the adjustment. Zarya is somebody that I think we'll see a bit more in this tournament compared to what she was at BlizzCon. I think she has risen a bit when it comes to her priority and the value that she can bring into some of the team fights. I didn't think I'd see it in this type of situation. I think it works out really well, but I am a bit fearful that Dig has picked a lot of heroes that they aren't overly comfortable in.
And are they maybe a little too all in onto the Illidan? That's what it feels like to me. They're putting all of their eggs in the Illidan basket.
Yeah, but we're going to have to find out, as this time we actually have the start of game number 2 between eStar and Team Dignitas. All right, here we go. On the left-hand side is going to be the all eggs in the Illidan basket. Dignitas. Athero is going to be playing the Illidan. Bakery will be playing Rhaegar. Zarya, played by Mene. JPL is going to be on the Tyrael, and Snitch on Tychus.
And on the red side of Infernal Shrines, we have eStar again with Savage playing Kerrigan, Tao playing Brightwing, Xingchen playing Falstad, Toomey on Tassadar, and Tiger rounding it out on that Muradin.
Oh man, I think a lot of this is going to be the story that we saw in the first series between, or excuse me, the first series of the day that we got to see on the stream with the Kerrigan. She has to be very, very effective, but there are so many tools that are going to be hard to deal with. Athero, his positioning, if he does slightly overextend, having a Rhaegar, having a Tyrael, and having a Zarya, if he's out of position and caught, I'm going to be very sad in terms of just how difficult and out of position he may have to be in that point in time. But we'll see how it plays out here for them. As for now, the teams are going to run a 1-4, but in the opposite directions of one another. Really
that
good.
Is interesting.
And one thing that's awesome from Dig is they're actually heavily zoning the slow rotation onto the Brightwing up to top 2. Small experience advantage, nothing to really brag too much about, but something they might have been able to capitalize if she overextended after.
You can also kind of get a slow push going there on the top lane by leaving those the three range minions alive, and then maybe get some wall damage. But eStar is looking to rotate up. Now, Dignitas has Tyrael in the way to kind of block that rotation, but they will get there eventually.
This is a pretty significant lane mismatch if it's left for very long. Bakery, over time, will struggle into this lane. Rhaegar can only... He's fine in the wave clear as long as he's left alone, but the damage output of Falstad is not something that you really want to deal with. And he's got Tiger to anchor as well. He goes in for the bite. Dwarf Toss, minions in the way. Right now, Bakery's on the run. Stormbolt is going to end up hitting, at the very max range there. Good harass going on the Bakery, forcing a tap, something he now won't have for the Shrine phase.
That stun from Savage, just barely connecting with JPL, not enough to take him down. Is Savage now out of position, though? Look at that Illidan chase, but the Falstad global in is going to be really nice. Kerrigan combo does not hit on the turnaround, and Xingchen has to barrel roll out. So despite Dignitas getting kind of out-globaled in that skirmish, they had enough of an advantage to still come out okay. And now they have 4-3, so they have that little talent spike on this Shrine, and this is pretty big. They're ahead of the Kerrigan comp in terms of skull count, which means instead of feeling pressured that you have to go into a Kerrigan, now Kerrigan needs to come into you, and she's much, much less scary in that situation.
Yeah, and as we say that, she ends up making it to the Shrine. 23 skeletal defenders in the hands of Dignitas, whereas only 6 for eStar. They're desperately trying to get the shields onto the Kerrigan. Athera goes in, combo comes out. That's the 3-man combo, though. So much damage. Snitch is in a bad spot. He ends up getting the dash out, but Kerrigan already lost her life here. Xingchen ends up following. So even though a beautiful entrance to a team fight here, eStar still gets turned on to, and that might be the survivability that we see out of Dignitas' composition with the Zarya, with the Rhaegar, and with the Tyrael. Very well done, and I thought that was going to be ugly for Dig. I thought that was going to turn very quickly, but they end up turning that around.
When a team fight starts with a 3-man Kerrigan combo and you lose the team fight hard,
you have to be getting to question your composition, especially when we're sitting pre-10. It's not like a post-10 where it's like, oh, but they got a huge sanctification and saved everybody. That was where you go, this is where my comp beats yours, right? Like where we end up hitting that striving moment, and it makes me think that really eStar is in a position where they have to catch somebody off guard. Like with a Gust, where they can't expect some kind of saving grace. But the invasion here is going to be happening as everybody from eStar is collapsing down. Tiger's already taken a lot of damage. Combo's not going to hit anybody. Dwarf Toss is available, ends up using it, but Savage is already caught out and ends up falling down here. Dignitas is, I talked about Infernal Shrines as their map, but usually they do not have this big of a lead already.
It's looking like the Illidan against Kerrigan is an absolutely dominant team fighting strategy. He always connects with the Kerrigan after her combo is down, and then she can never disengage. And that's always been a problem with Kerrigan. Once you connect and go for that combo, you're all in, especially if you have to jump in. So the fact that the Illidan can get on her and not be peeled because there's just too much healing and shielding, it's actually really interesting to watch Illidan basically have free reign inside eStar's team. They don't have the damage to deal with him.
Yeah, they do not. A lot of it is just coming down to the fall set, and it's with the Tassadar pickup, right? That high priority Tassadar pickup is, I mean, when Illidan was at the top of his game, when he was almost, I mean, a god among men, really, when it came to the meta for a while, one thing that was so difficult about dealing with him was not only his pressure, but the fact that he is insane with Tassadar, but he's good against. So you couldn't pick the Tassadar in an attempt to deny it just because the amount of damage that Tassadar doesn't put out. He limits the kill potential, right? Like, you look at it and it's either a Kerrigan combo, a Polymorph, and Falstead putting all their DPS in, and that's not considering all the saving tools that Dig has to really be able to kill Ethereal onto that Illidan. So, eStar, man, this is a rough spot.
Dignitas is doing a really good job here, just controlling the flow. Savage is kind of alone out here. If Thero just jumps on him, I don't know if he is going to be able to survive. Ooh, Thero got hit by that stun.
Wow.
You can't afford to do that when your support is not in range, but as I say that, Snitch lands a beautiful grenade and will secure the kill, leaving Savage out to dry, and that is a 2 for 0. Thero with the sick calculated baits there, eating the Kerrigan stun just to bait them in.
No, that was 100% calculated. He was like, you know, hold on, let me get on my calculator. Beep, boop, boop, boop. And he was like, oh yeah, now we got this 1 HP. I'll get the dash. But, I mean, we saw this in the first series of the day as well. This power spike is something that is insane, but it's even worse than we saw the first time because this 10 spike is so far ahead. Honestly, I'm surprised Dig isn't just not captured and just took the 4 for free, then get the cap here. So it doesn't take any free harass with this Frozen Punisher. But eStar just can't deal with them right now. They have to retreat, and Illidan is so terrifying when it comes to the siege because you just run in this lane so far. Look, they just move past. They're worried about the fight as fast as they can.
That's a little awkward for their Punisher. At least he didn't go to the keep wall, but that Tassadar pickoff is not that awful, honestly, for eStar. It's kind of just spending Dignitas' time, and when you're 2 levels up, the experience you get from getting a kill, not that huge. So eStar is, I mean, kind of doing the right thing. They're soaking 3 lanes, but it's not going to be enough. When you're this far behind an Illidan comp, and you're already struggling in damage, the Illidan can just do whatever he wants. That's kind of the thing with Illidan. You need to reach a critical mass of threat to actually be able to kill him, and for every support he has, that critical mass is increased. And I just feel like Dignitas...
Can they end? There's no...
I think they honestly could, but they won't.
With Illidan Sanctification and no 10, they actually might be able to end as long as they win. That would have been insane. It is an option for them, but they end up obviously not going with it here. We do see Savage going in for the combo. They don't even have their 10s yet, barely end up getting it here, but is it going to be enough? The Gust from behind, Sanctification still available, but JPL has no mana, so he's not going to be able to do that. Brightwing ends up losing her life here. Savage on the retreat as well. I think Dig is going to look for core. They have 2 good heroes when it comes to the core, and Gust is the best tool against them. This might be it. Is this an 8-minute game?
Absolutely.
Oh my.
That Gust is really not what you want to do.
Yeah, well, yeah, why, like, when your team is already on the back foot for a majority of it, and when Sanctification is still available, which keep in mind hasn't been used quite yet, and Thero actually pulling off here, not going on to the core. Sanctification, this is a very split choice from Dignitas. What?
This is really awkward. Thero chasing Falstad into the keep actually really cost them here. They only got 18% core health, and they're going to be giving up all of their experience lead almost, feels like. If they lose a couple more people now, Thero will survive, but Mene basically bites the bullet and dies for his buddy. Zarya, that's something Zarya would do.
I'm sorry, I'm at a loss for words on the decision making at that point in time. So Dignitas, that's the second. Let's let's take a minute to look at the 3 things that Dignitas did over that past like 10 minutes that maybe were suboptimal. Not even counting the core situation that they were in, is number 1, that they were willing to be able to pick up the Punisher before the fort was actually dead, saying that they were more worried about capturing and pushing their 10 advantage. But then when the Punisher went in, they only managed to get a pick onto 1 person, which then allowed a lot of free harass going onto the Punisher. Then when it moves past the wall, perfect execution on the follow-up to the leap, completely capitalizing on the lack of 10 on their opponent's side. But then again, they worry more about the fight than the siege potential, while their opponents still don't have 10. Eventually, they managed to getting it a free fight and then completely split focus. So for the 2nd time in a row here, it just,
to me, to me it just seemed like they thought they won for sure or something.
Like it was just free.
So they kind of just ran around, you know, I'll chase the false head into the keep, and they did not respect how dangerous what they were doing was. And yeah, they're still in the lead. They still have an experienced lead, and they have a keep down. That's great, but
you know, I mean, the game is still completely in their control, right?
Yeah.
Like an 80% core with an Illidan Tyrael alone is something where you go like, at any point they could backdoor by themselves and be able to win the game. But it just, it's things like that that you can't have if you want to win this tournament, because this format, you truly have to be the best to be able to pull out a win at this Gold Club World Championship, because you have to take every team from every part of the world, some of the most dominant regions. You know, we aren't only facing 2 seeds from China and 2 from Korea. We have 3 of both. But Punisher going into the upper half, though. Teleport from Brightwing. They're looking towards the keep. Athero's still very healthy with the shield comp dunk.
Athero is tanking the keep, and his evasion ran out, so his move speed and attack speed will be slowed. It's going to take a few seconds for Dignitas to get back in position here. They are trying to get something in.
He's split.
Meta did go down, but he will not be focus fired afterwards, so he'll be fine. The Ancestral hits, and now Dignitas, all at full HP, has control of this, but it looks like they're going to get the keep. But eStar wants to engage the beautiful Sanctification after the Kerrigan combo, and now suddenly eStar bit off more than they can chew as Kerrigan goes down to the Illidan, really the story of this game, and I don't think that eStar has the damage to kill anyone. No. Look how low Dig is, and they can just kite back and heal.
But Athero's health is so high right now, too. Like, everybody's worried about the backline, but Athero's legitimately having a heyday right now. He is just not caring. His damage output, as I say that, though, the dash in may be a bit too optimistic here. But he was just wailing away onto everybody. Now the 2nd keep has fallen here for Team Dignitas. And then, great zoning tool there. Mene with a very classic, but the dive in, not necessarily as far as they want. Snitch is in a bad spot. Gus is still on a 2-second cooldown here. Zarya shield coming into play. Stun, great cleanse from Bakery. Might be able to peel him off. Will they end up getting Snitch? No, they won't. And is Athero going to be able to turn this?
He can chase it all the way past. If he gets this Muradin kill, it's really bad for eStar.
They have, his Metamorphosis just came up here. This could be terrible for eStar. Panda is on the, or excuse me, Xing Shen is on the retreat. Tiger as well.
Athero can taste it.
There's the nose. Yeah. Taste for blood. He's going in here slowly but surely. They might be able to get the turn on him because everybody else on Dig is very low. Polymorph comes out and they won't be able to confirm the kill. That's a Kerrigan combo. I think they have what it takes.
If Tyrael goes down here, it would be so good for Dig, but he doesn't even need to, as they do secure the kill onto Tassadar. There he goes. He goes down. Mene in trouble, but has the shield for himself. Meanwhile, Athero will get the extra kill on the backside thanks to that Tyrael. But now this fight is so spread out.
I'm so confused right now. It's like I haven't ever played Heroes of the Storm. I'm watching this game, I feel like I legitimately have never experienced what this video game is like. There are so many things that I hold absolute and true that are just completely broken in this entire game. But Dig got more damage on the core. Catapults ended up taking a couple of percentages. Shield's still currently down. 16 talent tier advantage into their favor. The Shrine phase is going to spawn. They are going to be down a man for about a 12-second disadvantage, but the fact that eStar is not capitalizing, Kerrigan not being on the Shrine there is actually something that you view as like kind of like a subtle misplay, but they absolutely have to capitalize on that man advantage they had, and the fact that they aren't is already giving Dignitas a very big comeback opportunity here. Even though they have the experience advantage, they should be struggling with this Immortal.
It feels like eStar is overly scared about the 16 gap. When you have the 5v4, I feel like you can at least move out on the map long enough where you can still soak 16.
Especially with the double global.
Absolutely, but they spent so far on their side of the map, and they didn't even get to the temple until Dig was already up 15.
Yeah, and we do see them going in. Keep in mind, no Holy Ground picked up here. Instead, it was the Blood for Blood, keeping them alive. Combo goes down onto Snitch. Great shield from Mene. JPL, Sanctification, Ancestral coming out as well. The Gust to zone everything, but Falset has already fallen down here. Athero is just trying to dance onto everybody. Savage goes in, gets the combo, but two people have already fallen here for eStar. 24 skeletal defenders picked up for Dignitas as they are almost absolutely going to be able to get this Punisher. But there's a fort up here. So, you know, it's not like it was going to be spawning on top or bottom where you know it's going to be moving the keep. It is just going to be able to onto the fort and onto the keep here. And Kerrigan should be alive by the time it gets after the first leap past the wall. So for now, eStar has to be able to move past the Punisher when it leaps and get a full combo fight. But I just feel like it's a 79% core, and I'm looking at a Sanctification up at 30 seconds and an Illidan. Dignitas wants to end right now.
Can Dignitas just like run to the core?
I thought if they were going to do that, should have done it 30 seconds earlier. I thought about that, but then they didn't make the move, so now they can't. They have to be able to win this traditionally, if you will. Gus is still going to be up right now. I'd like to see the flight in just to force the fight in some way, shape, or form, but they instead being a bit more patient here.
Kerrigan combo missed. That means that there's not enough tools for eStar to engage, and Dignitas will get the keep, but will they make the decision to go back or not? It feels like Dignitas wants to leave, but Athero keeps engaging. Will that be a problem? Now, Athero gets isolated very far in the back, thanks to that Gust.
That Sanctification hit nobody, no, and now that is a cooldown that they don't have available. Ancestral Healing is not up either. Mane ends up confirming the kill onto Kerrigan, though. Athero's still going in very aggressively as Tiger is trying to zone everyone into the backline. They're very low. They don't have very many cooldowns. Ancestral just coming off a cooldown now. Will he be able to get the heal onto somebody? JPL ends up falling. I don't know if Bakery has the mana. Mane goes in, the core 63%, 3 of the minions up, and now Athero moves in. They have Metamorphosis, Ancestral is used. This should be at 30% core. I don't think Dig can find a way to get distracted by a keep when there are no keeps left up.
They certainly can't, but
they can't.
I don't know if it's enough. The Polymorph bought so much time. Athero going down 11%.
I don't have one. I told you, everything I knew about this game is not true. Like, it's just...
Dignitas seems to be playing with their food a little bit in this game, and I think that is costing them big time.
Is it costing them, or it's just costing them time in the sense that they are failing to be able to knock down the core? Because if there is a fort down on Dignitas' side, the only thing it has cost them is experience advantage. That is the only thing, and I mean a W, really, at the end of the day, which they should still have the tools with an 11% core for somebody to be able to end the game here. But I mean, I can't help but agree with you. Those are the type of things that you never see, in my opinion, from great teams, right? Like, it's a very focused, like that. When you have that kind of lead and control what could have been a 7.5-minute game, that now we're now looking at this 16 and 16-30 spike in a 20 versus 20. They still have a huge advantage, but I can't help but...
If you allow yourself to get sloppy just because you're so ahead in this game, that can leach into other aspects of your play. I think that's the risk, right? So the reason you see the teams who are super serious, who are ultra professional about it, like Ballistics, when they go for those wins, they never play with their food because they don't want to allow that to leak into the rest of their games. And I don't know if that's really what Dignitas is doing here, but it feels like they're not being as precise as they should be when they have this lead.
Yeah,
and
now they're more worried about this fight, and nobody's moving onto the core at all, and he's completely isolated. Athero gets polymorphed, the cleanse comes out. He does have Metamorphosis in 5 seconds here, but the entire Punisher completely ignored by Dignitas. They didn't feign for a core. They didn't do anything other than draw a small skirmish into the mid lane. Now they're going to be backing up.
And they didn't soak 20. They didn't soak at all. So eStar has like a 2% chance to win here. If
okay, I guess that's how we should put it, right? Is that Dig is still in the control. Like, when your core is that low, you're always in control. But this is one of the few decisions Dignitas could have made to lose this game. Because when you bring the fight over to your side of the map, suddenly lethal opens for your opponent even when you have everything up, right? Whereas Dignitas can take a fight almost at any point and get the split pressure rotating in. That's not the case here for eStar. Punisher was drawn over the wall. eStar is failing to capitalize, not using their only moment of opportunity I feel like they would have. 20 advantage a Punisher, and you're at the keep drawing a fight on Dignitas' side of the map, and you aren't willing to take it. I'm not kidding when I say I genuinely don't understand Heroes of the Storm anymore.
This is definitely a case of eStar not grasping that maybe even if it's only a 2% or a 3% chance to win, that's still your best line.
That's your best.
When you have a line that's very hard, you still need to take it, but Here,
unless
it's
Dig
20
does
to
this,
21.
Bakery's in a very terrible position, completely out. He doesn't have the opportunity to be able to save himself with Ancestral. He does end up getting out here. Tiger taking a lot of damage. Gus and Sync both use the split. Meta coming into play here. Tiger's taking a lot of damage, but that is more heroics used on the side of Dig than, in fact, eStar. We do have the blink kill up. JPL, great Ancestral from Bakery. And that was a combo miss on the Kerrigan as Tiger ends up going down here. That is going to be the first kill here for Dig. Can they get more? They do have the Illidan. You know they want to be able to get the chase. And it looks like this should, I am afraid to say that this should be it at this point in time. Athero's going around, the flight onto Snitch. Ethereal's already dead. Snitch ends up going down too. Bakery and Athero, they aren't even looking to the core. They're right next to the core, and they're worried more about the fight than anything when they're losing this. Bakery has no HP. He ends up getting into his Ghost Wolf. He's trying to withdraw. Now Athero is afraid to be able to go on the core.
Mene's mounted up. He's not fighting. They know they can't get it.
Team? That Shen is on chase. He doesn't have mana. He can't barrel roll and use a W, I don't think. But Bakery, the stagger death matters. I would wait if I'm Xing Shen. Actually, try and buy as much time as you can. Can he get it? All right, confirms the kill here. 30 seconds to act with 4 people down.
How is eStar still in this game?
Why didn't they just go core the minute 1 kill happened?
As soon as you get the kill,
Dignitas thinks they have to win a fight.
You kill Murden, everyone runs to the core. There's no way they can get rid of Illidan.
No way.
In time. It's not possible.
Like, hello?
But they keep fighting, and I wanted to say that it feels like when one person goes down on eStar, they don't have the tools to get the kills, but Dignitas let Kerrigan and Falstead basically pick apart their backline while Illidan was chasing the Tassadar, and it just did not work out.
Okay, so one thing for eStar that really is a unfortunate event is not the fact that it goes at 11%, but the fact that every Punisher spawns where there's a fort up available. So they have another structure to be able to move through that's going to be free harass. I'd like to see them try and take out that fort beforehand, but the fact Falstead is so worried about backdoor control, about catapults onto his core, that they really don't have that leisure to be able to move out and do those type of things. So, in fact, they are going to be probably going to pick it up as soon as possible. We see Dig is now deciding, what if we worry about going for the core for these skirmishes? Tassadar will he be able to survive here? There's going to be his deep shift. That's going to be the first one available to him. Kerrigan picks it up. Kerrigan needs to rotate to the fight now because Dig is worried about it. But see how everybody on eStar is moving up? Why doesn't they just go to core with Dignitas, have one Illidan just go by himself, and everybody force the dismount. Don't allow them to be able to retreat. But now Dignitas, again, is going to be pulling back in this point in time, and that is, again, a window, a percentage, the 3% you brought up before that we didn't think would exist again. Turns out, nope, Chuck Testa, it's here, and let's see what eStar is able to do with it.
Now, I don't like that eStar is making the decision to not fight around their Punisher. I feel like you need to get any advantage you can, and those stuns can matter so much, but we do see this skirmish is going in, and they're putting a lot of damage on Bakery, but he heals himself up with the rewind. Now, Tao is in a little bit of trouble, but he blink heals out as Brightwing Gust has been used along with Kerrigan's Maelstrom. This means they are out of cooldowns on the side of eStar.
Yeah, good cleanse there coming up from Bakery to peel off to the combo. Savage is getting obliterated, ends up bolting out there. We do see a lot of harass onto JPL. Keep in mind, no sanctification. Ethereal going in. Ancestral is available. There goes the Metamorphosis. So all he has is Ancestral left. But look at that patience there from Kerrigan. This is all their cooldowns. Ethereal didn't get almost any value out of that Ancestral, so if they end up turning onto him, they might be able to get a pick. JPL has no mana. Combo misses. Polymorph comes into play, and Dig is slowly moving away, but eStar can't retreat to their core because that will be game. They have to turn this fight here. Good zoning coming up from Mene and the Repulsion Zone, but look at Ethereal realizes the circumstances. Dig is not going to force the issue. Combo goes on to Mene. Zarya ends up falling here. One person down. eStar, the dream that nobody thought could happen. Great fight there coming out from the Falstead, going on to Ethereal. Will he be able to withdraw? Ends up getting the Q out. Keep in mind, there's 2 catapults moving to core down below. The cooldown of Falstead's passive, probably going to be 10 more seconds. Somebody has to back to be able to defend that. And we'll see what happens here as Ethereal is still in retreat. One person down here.
eStar wants to find more kills. They know they need to make something happen.
I don't know if they realize their core is going to be pressured in a matter of seconds.
As many times as they're getting kills and winning these team fights, it's not getting them anywhere. They've taken out 2 forts in all of this. It's been 5 minutes that they've had this 20-20, and they just got 2 forts. They need to find a way to actually open up realistic lethal potential, because right now...
Wasn't that at the keep? That was the best lethal.
It was, but now they're looking at, we need to wait for another Punisher in order for them to have a chance. And at this point, I want to say that if either team gets a Punisher at this point, that team has the shot to win. Dignitas definitely wins because the 11% core, But if eStar gets a Punisher, then suddenly they have a real shot at winning this game.
Call me crazy, all right? I just need I need somebody to make me realize that I'm not insane for this thought process, okay? Tell me if I'm wrong here. If eStar even feigns one person onto a Punisher, I win the game if I'm Team Dignitas.
They think they're doing that right now. Look at this. Athero and JPL ran all the way to the bottom side of the map.
But the minions, okay, so the minions can't see you against that sidewall. Just so you know, if you run across it, if that minion wave moves fast, oh my goodness, he knows. They don't see him. Nobody sees this.
They're going to wait in this brush for the next minion wave?
So you wait for the mix. When you wait, that sidewall will reveal them. Athero,
they
see him. They see him. They see him. So do they respond? Falstead is making no gesture quite yet.
There's
Keep in mind, there goes the flight. Gust is still available. He can't open with it yet. Athero is moving in. He has meta. Sanct is available too. There is the Sanct. They're going in. This is so close. Gust.
The carry combo.
Everybody else from Dig is now coming into play. Bakery is very desperate. JPL has passive. That alone will get 4%. Great polymorph onto Bakery, though, and the Ancestral hits 5, 3, 0. Dig somehow confirms this game, but my goodness, what did we just witness here?
That was chaos in that game.
Look at their faces.
Mayhem. That is the face of a team who won, but lost the moral victory.
Yes.
When they wanted to send a message, but they couldn't. They tried so hard to not win that game after they had a huge lead. And when you have the Illidan Interior composition, you can end. I mean, that eStar showed so much tenacity staying in that game and looking for every opportunity. Yeah, we said they maybe could have gone more crazy with that Punisher to go for lethal, but still, to stay in that game and take all those team fights when you start out so far behind, that takes a special something.
I think the most beautiful thing they did that I think as an average viewer you may not appreciate how difficult their thought process has to be is in that fight where they start moving back to their core, they suddenly have a moment where they go, we can't go back anymore. And you want the safety of those extra shots, but they just can't risk that, and they end up turning around and being able to get the kills onto to Dignitas before they get to the core, and then suddenly you're for the third time going, wait, Dig can't do this. But Athero Angel on the Illidan will be our MVP in that game.
As he should be, considering the entire composition was built around making Illidan things happen, and Illidan was a beast in that game. For the first 12 minutes, he was untouchable. And that really showed the dominance and strength of that composition, at least against the Kerrigan composition. So big props to Dignitas. That is a creative draft style, and I really like the way they used that against Kerrigan, and team fought so well. It just kind of got lost in all the mayhem of the late game.
I agree. I think I like the adaptation as well, with knowing that they had a playstyle that they went into MVP, and then MVP responded with almost a close-ish playstyle, and Dig was like, you know, we can run that too, and using it to much success here against eStar. But I mean, we can't help but remind you guys that that game started with a 2-level lead, 10-8. Right, it was a very convincing game for Team Dignitas, getting a keep at 6 or 5 minutes into the game. I think it was the 6-minute mark here, and then suddenly just the gates opened for eStar in more ways than one, it really felt like, and they end up turning it around, and that is huge for them. Again, every game at this tournament matters. Getting that 1-1, suddenly they're one step closer to being able to get into that upper bracket in the knockout stage.
And eStar, okay, the early game looked ugly for them, but overall, I would say this set as a whole, this match, both these games together, was really a testament to eStar as a very real threat at this tournament.
I think I would agree. Even though that game obviously looked really crazy, I think a lot of people don't really understand how difficult the mindset of that entire match had to be.
11% core for 10 minutes?
For like 10 minutes, yeah. The fact that you make all the right decisions to ensure the fact that your opponent can't really get that cutout. But either way, that was phenomenal play, and we'll be back in just a minute, guys, as we're going to go to a short break. But stay tuned because we have some more awesome games here at the Gold Club World Championship.